He then enters and we see multiple people lined up against the wall. This was his hidden sacrificial chamber. Kettle says that he's surprised there was a hidden room, but he wonders what all these people are doing here. He waves, asking if there's anybody there, even getting right into their faces. And of course, there's no reply. He wonders what exactly he should do and says that he should head back to the estate for now. Once he explains the situation, they'll probably send over people to take care of this. He enters the guild hall and walks over towards Rosa. She's excited to see him, saying that he's a bit early today. He says he had some things to deal with, and she asks what they were. He says yesterday he showed her the orb and tells her the story. She says that he must be joking, and he says that he's not. She says that a lich is one of the only 5 in the world, and there's no way it'd be in a backwater place like this. He then pulls out the vase, saying that he brought back a jar that looks like the lich's life vessel, asking if she can appraise it. She sits there for a second wondering if she's being pranked and then freaks out saying that he wasn't joking. She's still trying to process what's going on, and Kettle tells her that there were a few people inside as well. He thought about bringing them out, but their minds were gone. So he left them, and it would be best if the guild sent someone to check. She says, "Come to think of it, there have been several disappearance cases in the territory, but no news of any of them ever being found. And if those were the work of a lich, it would make sense." She tells him to wait a moment as she'll call for someone immediately. The guard captain runs in asking if there's really a lich, and Kettle says it's good to see him here, but tells him that it's all been taken care of, so there's nothing to worry about. The guard captain asks what he means and then starts screaming Cardoso's name. Kettle says that's what he said it was, asking if he knows him. The guard captain says, "Of course he does. Cardos was a sorcerer who flipped the world upside down over a century ago. He's the creator of magic that manipulates emotions, causing endless chaos. He drove kings mad and brought ruin to 5 kingdoms. And he can't believe he was here as a lich." He then asks if this is really true. Kettle says it was, but he wasn't impressive. He just kept doing weird things on his own and ended up self-destructing. The guard captain asks what he's even saying, and that's absurd. There was no way a mage like Cardos would self-destruct, and he wants a better explanation. Kettle says that even if he wants that, he can't tell him much more, as that's what happened. The guard captain, confused, tells him to wait for a moment as he's going to go inform the Lord. Luke's freaking out that there was a lich right next door, asking if he's sure and if it could have been a different kind of monster. The guard captain says based on the testimonies of the people who were rescued, it's not likely, and they also have physical proof. Luke asks if he means the phylactery, a lich at that level hiding near the estate unnoticed, and that this means the Empire may dispatch investigators at any moment of all times. With Kane being away from the estate, this is going to be an insane headache. He puts his hands on the table saying to prepare some word to the capital. Luke says that perhaps they were still lucky. The guard captain says yes. The Kettle hadn't found it. They might have been the first victims. Cardos was likely in the midst of preparations to resurrect, so it's very likely that things would have gone really bad. Luke says that is definitely possible. And even so, this is a remarkable feat, and they have to give him a reward fitting of it, assuming they can offer something adequate from their own means. That is the next day in the Lord's estate. There's banging and yelling at the door. Luke says he's awake and gets excited, saying to let the guest in. The door is open and a woman runs in saying that the son of God's Inquisitor, Lord Aquis, has arrived at the estate. Luke is surprised and we see a woman. Luke asks what she's doing here and why the Inquisitor of the Sun God is here. He takes her to his guest room and they have a seat across from each other. He says it's an honor, introducing himself and thanks her for visiting despite it being sudden. Aquis sits there silently before introducing herself as an Inquisitor of the Sun God. She's the youngest to ever be appointed. She is the one who beheaded 7 warlocks who had signed pacts with demons and single-handedly disrupted a massive ritual. Currently the most powerful Inquisitor of the Sun God on the continent. Even the Empire defers to the Sun God's church. She holds power that far exceeds a mere provincial lord, so he wonders why someone like that is here. She says that she's heard the estate has been rather noisy lately. Luke says there was a small problem with the nearby dungeon, but it's been resolved. He says that she must not be here because of the Lich, asking the reason for her visit. She says that she is here to speak about a divine oracle. He's surprised, and she says that before she can share its contents, she wants to hear about what happened recently. Luke decides it would be best to tell her. She asks if a barbarian really defeated the Lich. Luke says yes, and it may have been Cardos. She says that's pretty crazy to think about, asking if they have proof. He pulls out Cardos' phylactery, and as soon as she sees it, she realizes it's true, asking what in the hell happened, and then clutches her amulet, asking if perhaps the barbarian is still present in this estate right now. Luke says that he is still in the territory. Aquis asks if something like that is even possible, though. Luke says it is, and even Lord Cain was defeated by him. She says that it appears a new power has emerged, asking which tribe he is from. Luke tells her that he claims to be from the White Wastelets. She asks how could a being from the demon realm step outside of it, and says that maybe the barbarian is the reason she has been sent here. Luke asks what she means, and she asks if she can meet the barbarian in person. Back inside, the ink kettle is staying at. He is trying to figure out how the hell to use this magic stone. He says it looks like some kind of artifact that supports magic, and that he will ask a mage about it later. He then realizes something, saying, "Come to think of it, it's about that time." Earlier in the morning, the guard captain told him that the Inquisitor of the Sun God has requested a meeting and the location is the church, and when he meets her to please show proper respect. Kettle tells him not to worry. It jumps to the guard captain looking over, asking Kettle if he is ready to leave. He says that since he is all dressed up, he will take that as a yes and they will head off. Then Kettle says that in this world gods truly exist. They bestow power directly and may descend in person, and the place where those who serve them gather is the church. But what makes a fantasy church different? The guard captain says they have arrived, and Kettle says that this place looks really cool, and he is obviously in awe. The guard captain says that someone will guide him once he is inside, and Kettle says he appreciates it. He then enters and takes a look around, spotting all of the church-like decorations, and some of the sisters greet him, saying that the Inquisitor is waiting for him, and they will guide him to the room. Kettle says okay, and we hear Aquia saying it is a pleasure to meet him, and she introduces herself to him. He says it is nice to meet her, and of course he introduces himself. He says she is very young, and it means she is very capable. He smiles, and she wonders what he is smiling about, and if it means something. He asks what reason she wanted to meet, which catches her off guard for some reason, and she lowers her head, saying that it is about what happened recently. She brings up some of the same lore about Cardos, the one he has claimed defeat, as he has committed grave atrocities across the eventually becoming a lich, and only heroes could stand against him. Kettle says he has heard about that, but the dude he saw was a lich flailing on his own and ended up destroying himself, and if she doesn't believe him, he can't prove it as he only speaks of what he saw. She asks if he would permit her god to witness their conversation directly. Kettle asks what she means, and she says that if Kettle lies in the sun god's presence, there will be a divine reaction. Kettle says it's like a lie detector, and she says that even if he is not a normal barbarian, he is still a barbarian, and there is no way he would agree to this. She says that if he is uncomfortable, he may refuse. But Kettle asks why he would do that, as this is the perfect chance to experience divine power. She asks if he is certain, and he says, hell yeah, and they should start right away. She realizes she might have treated him too harshly and says that she understands and they can begin. She then puts her hands together, praying, asking her god, who watches from the highest place and oversees the sun itself, to please watch with his gaze and reveal any falsehoods in the space. A giant beam of light begins to descend upon the church, and Kettle immediately feels it, saying that he can feel a presence beyond the light. It's massive, and it is a being that cannot be described in human words, and its emotion right now is nothing but pure confusion. After a little bit, Aquis says that she is glad there is no reaction, and it's time for them to begin. From now on, within this pillar, nothing false is allowed. Kettle opens his eyes, saying he understands. Under the blazing gaze of the sun god, Kettle stood face to face with Inquisitor Aqua. Their dialogue began with solemn weight, as Kettle recounted in detail his battle inside the dungeon. the clash with the Lich. Every word he spoke was bathed in divine light, and the radiant power surrounding them remained calm. No resistance, no rejection. It was proof undeniable. His words were the absolute truth. Inside her mind, Aqua reached a chilling conclusion. The Lich Cardos must have been gravely weakened during his resurrection ritual. Had he been at his full power, she thought, this barbarian before her would have been nothing more than a lifeless corpse. When Kettle finished his testimony, he asked if her doubts had been put to rest. Aqua admitted they had and even apologized for her earlier suspicions. Kettle dismissed her worries with a calm smile, saying he too had enjoyed this rare experience. Then, gathering her courage, Aqua requested to ask one final personal question. Kettle allowed it, and in a steady but tense voice, she asked if he truly hailed from the white snowfield. Kettle answered without hesitation. His calm confirmation struck her like thunder. Her red eyes widened, disbelief written across her face. How could anyone come from that demon-infested land? She instantly recalled the ancient legend spoken by the Emperor, the tale of the Ashen Barbarian. Her gaze sharpened, her crimson eyes glinting. But before she could speak further, Kettle turned the tables, saying he too had a question. Why had she really come to this territory? Aqua replied vaguely about personal business. Kettle's eyes narrowed, cutting straight through her words. He asked if her true mission was to confirm whether he was an unclean being. Aqua faltered, caught off guard. She tried to deny it, but Kettle pressed on. With piercing clarity, he pointed out the obvious. The sun god himself had descended to watch their exchange. That was no ordinary divine light detection ritual. It was a sign of something far greater. Under that holy influence, Aqua could not lie. With her lips trembling, she admitted he was right. Kettle pieced it together. He had been her true target from the start. Aqua quickly shook her head, insisting it wasn't so. She explained that only upon arriving here had she begun to suspect he might be the figure tied to an old prophecy. But today, under divine judgment, the truth had been laid bare. He was not the one foretold. Ashamed, Aqua apologized for concealing her true intentions. Kettle accepted her words with surprising ease, even finding the whole affair rather intriguing. Seizing the moment, he asked her to reveal the prophecy itself. Aqua hesitated, her hand gripping the sun-shaped pendant at her neck. Normally, such secrets were shared only with those she trusted deeply, yet something in Kettle's presence compelled her to speak. Slowly, she began to recite the prophecy. As her words unfolded, Kettle's face shifted with shock and wonder. When the tale ended, Aqua stood silent, lost in deep thought by the great church window. The heavy air was broken by the sound of footsteps. Turning, she saw Lord Barkin approach. He immediately noticed the conflict written on her face and asked what troubled her. Aqua confessed that she had met someone, but instead of answers, that meeting had left her even more conflicted. Lord Barkin pressed further. Who was this person? Her answer was firm and unwavering. Kettle was indeed a barbarian from the white snowfield. The Lord's eyes widened in disbelief. Is this true? He asked. Aqua nodded. If such news spread, she warned, it would throw the entire world into chaos. Lord Barkin could only sigh, heavy with despair. What he had prayed was nothing more than a rumor had revealed itself as undeniable truth. Lord Barkin's expression hardened with worry. He warned that many, especially the Emperor himself, had long desired to explore the white snowfield. If word of Kettle's origin spread, the Emperor's ambition could ignite chaos across the world. But Aqua quickly calmed him. There was no need to fear, she explained. Her organization would personally take responsibility for dealing with the Lich Cardos, and above all, they intended to keep Kettle's existence hidden from the public. This assurance greatly relieved the Lord. Curious, he asked if all barbarians from the white snowfield were as powerful as Kettle. Aqua shook her head firmly. If that were the case, she reasoned, they would have left the snowfield ages ago and conquered the world by now. The Lord agreed, remarking that although barbarians were blessed with unmatched physical strength, they were plagued by a fatal flaw, stupidity. Yet he frowned deeply, pondering the consequences should such beings ever gain intelligence. Akka's tone grew serious. She had heard that Cattle was different. He possessed not only overwhelming strength, but also a sharp mind. What's more, she revealed, the current barbarian king was unlike his brutish predecessors. She had met him once, and he had left her unsettled with how distinct he was from ordinary barbarians. The Lord mused aloud that a meeting between Cattle and this king might prove fascinating. But Aqua immediately rejected the idea, her voice sharp. Surprised, the Lord listened as she explained. Relations between barbarians and the followers of the gods were already strained. Any growth in their power was nothing to take lightly. Shifting the subject, the Lord pressed her about the prophecy. What secret was so dire that it required a private meeting between her and Cattle? Aqua admitted she only wished to confirm something, whether Cattle was truly human or some other being wearing a human guise. The Lord froze at her words. What exactly does this prophecy say? He demanded. Standing before the great church window, Aqua drew a steady breath. Her crimson eyes flickered with unease as she revealed the prophecy. When she finished, the Lord could only stare, stunned into silence, muttering words of disbelief. Later that day, Lord Barkin summoned Cattle once more. Cattle entered casually, remarking that thanks to the Lord's support, his life in the territory had been going smoothly. But then he asked bluntly why he had been called. The Lord straightened, saying there was something he must declare as the ruler of this land. Though Cattle appeared indifferent, Barkin continued, announcing that he had prepared a reward to honor Cattle for saving the territory. At his command, a guard stepped forward and placed a small leather pouch before Cattle. The barbarian blinked in surprise. Was this truly the great reward? With a faint smile, Barkin explained that this was no ordinary pouch. He urged Cattle to inspect it. Cattle picked it up, instantly sensing there was something unusual about it. The Lord encouraged him to open it and see for himself. This, Barkin said, is an artifact, a magical tool of the bag type. Its inner space is equal to the size of this very reception hall. Kettle's eyes widened. Never before had he seen a genuine artifact forged by magic. Barkin added that the pouch could store countless items, even those larger than its own opening. Eager to test it, Cattle lifted his massive axe and eyed the tiny pouch opening skeptically. But the moment he pushed the weapon forward, it vanished inside in a blink, swallowed whole by the artifact. Cattle froze, stunned at the sight. To retrieve it, Barkin explained, simply reach inside and picture the item in your mind. Cattle stood there, amazement spreading across his rugged face. For the first time, the barbarian held in his hands a true treasure of the magical world. Kettle followed the Lord's instructions carefully, slipping his hand inside the pouch. At first he hesitated, unsure if the artifact would truly respond. But the moment he thought of his axe, he felt its weight in his grip again. Pulling it free, the massive weapon emerged as though it had never been swallowed at all. Cattle's eyes lit up with boyish amazement. Incredible, he breathed. Lord Barkin smiled, pleased at his reaction. He told Cattle that this artifact was his gift, a reward for saving the territory, and hoped he would put it to good use. Cattle laughed heartily, declaring that he loved it and would definitely use it well. The Lord nodded with satisfaction, closing the matter outwardly, but inwardly his thoughts darkened. The prophecies still lingered. What was truly unfolding in his distant territory? He remembered the words of the Swordmaster, who warned that creatures from the demon realms were beginning to appear across the land. Now, tied together with Aqua's prophecy, the signs grew clearer. A great evil will descend upon this territory, and from here it will spread across the world. His unease only deepened. One of Barkin's villages had recently fallen silent. At first, no one cared much, until a neighboring village sent men to investigate, and they too never returned. Even the Lord's own guards had vanished when dispatched to uncover the truth. Only then did he realize the situation was far more dangerous than anyone had thought. Later, inside the mercenary guild, Cattle approached Rosa and asked about the day's available quests. She informed him of an urgent request issued directly from the Lord. Curious, Kettle asked about its nature, and Rosa explained. The task was to investigate the village that had lost all contact. The assignment was simple, just confirm the situation. The reward, however, was suspiciously high. Kettle's interest was piqued immediately. With no hesitation, he accepted. Rosa wasn't surprised, smiling at his eagerness. At the designated gathering point for mercenaries, a familiar voice suddenly called his name in shock. Kettle? It was the priestess Hayes. She stared wide-eyed at him, noticing at once his new attire. Kettle now wore custom-made clothes, far different from his rugged gear of the snowfields. He explained casually that his old clothes had worn out, so he ordered this new design himself. Hayes admitted the style was unique and impressive, though she seemed distracted by his unexpected presence. When she asked if he had accepted the mission too, Kettle confirmed with a grin, saying he couldn't resist such an interesting job. Hayes thought to herself once more how unusual this man truly was. Kettle then asked why she was alone, and whether her companions Alexandro and Kassan would not be joining. Hayes guessed they had probably turned the mission down. Looking around, Kettle noticed the crowd was smaller than he had expected. Barely 10 mercenaries had gathered, when such high pay for a simple investigation should have attracted dozens. He frowned, voicing his disappointment. Hayes sighed and explained that the reward was suspiciously high for a reason. Rumors claimed that the guards sent earlier had all vanished without a trace. The mission was not as simple as it seemed. Even so, Kettle insisted the turnout was still too low. That was when Hayes reluctantly revealed another detail. There was one more reason mercenaries had refused. It was because Lady Aqua herself, the heretic inquisitor of the sun god, would be joining this mission. Very few mercenaries dared to work alongside her. Hayes admitted her own fears aloud, wondering if Aqua might decide to cut off her head during the mission. Kettle chuckled and reassured her. She won't. Lady Aqua is polite and kind. Hayes froze, stunned by his words. You know Lady Aqua? Kettle nodded easily, even smiling as he said, Yes, she's my friend. Hayes stood speechless, her thoughts spinning. A barbarian and the feared heretic inquisitor friends? The very idea defied everything she thought she knew. Kettle noticed Aqua's arrival at the gathering point and immediately strode over, greeting her with his usual cheer. It's good to see you again. Her red eyes shifted toward him, her tone cold and flat. I don't recall us ever becoming friends. Kettle only laughed, brushing off her icy words. Then let's become friends starting today. Aqua ignored the suggestion entirely, turning instead to Hayes, who stood nervously beside Kettle. And you? Are you also a follower of another god? Kettle blinked in surprise. Aqua somehow knew Hayes. Aqua pressed further, remarking that as far as she knew, the followers of Lady Kusi should currently be in their period of rest. Only high-ranking members would be active. Then, catching herself, she softened slightly. I must be mistaken. It's impossible to know every detail of every religious order. Before the awkward silence could deepen, the guard captain arrived with his soldiers. Kettle's face lit up as he recognized him. We meet again, he said heartily, greeting him with casual ease. Aqua remained calm at Kettle's side, while Hayes shifted uneasily, worry written across her features. The guard captain raised his voice formally, welcoming all those who had accepted the Lord's request. Once attendance was confirmed, he announced that it was time to depart. Kettle glanced around the group, smirking. What a majestic gathering. It almost feels like we're marching off to storm a fortified castle. His voice then lowered with a more serious edge as he turned to Aqua. Tell me, does your swift action mean this is the moment, the one spoken of in the prophecy? Aqua's reply came measured and calm. I cannot say. The god has not revealed when such an event will truly come to pass. All we know is that contact with the village has been severed completely and without warning. Kettle's eyes narrowed. So there's still a chance that this is the beginning of what was foretold. The words of the prophecy echoed in his mind, an unparalleled evil descending upon the earth. His lips curved into a smile, not of fear but of anticipation. The thought of facing such a foe seemed to stir something wild within him. After a long and cautious march, the group finally reached the outskirts of the village. A heavy silence hung over the place like a shroud. The guard captain turned to Aqua. "What do you sense?" Aqua's brows furrowed, her voice edged with concern. "Nothing. No sign of life at all. It's as if this village has been stripped of its very souls." The captain muttered that perhaps the villagers had fled in fear and quickly ordered his men to spread out and search for clues. Cattle and Hayes nodded and moved into the shadowy alleys alongside the others. The captain studied the small settlement. It could not have held more than 100 people. For an entire village to vanish without a trace was beyond reason. Still, he was confident some sign must remain. "Search every corner," he ordered. "Even the smallest clue will do." Moments later, a mercenary's shout cut through the silence. "Captain, over here!" They rushed into a wooden house where the man pointed at a table. Plates of food lay set out neatly, steam still curling from them. The captain frowned. "Perhaps they left in a hurry." "No, sir." The mercenary interrupted, his voice unsteady. "The food is still warm, as if it was made just minutes ago." The captain's eyes widened in shock. It had been days since contact was lost. How could a meal remain hot after so long? As confusion rippled through the group, another scout reported in. No footprints, no signs of flight, no hidden survivors anywhere near the area. The village was empty, eerily, impossibly empty. The captain clenched his jaw and gave the order. "Continue searching. We will find out what happened here." The search of the village soon revealed a scene that was both perplexing and deeply disturbing. Everywhere they looked were traces of daily life. Half-eaten meals, tools scattered in use, clothes left hanging to dry. Everything suggested the villagers had been living normally just moments ago. Yet not a single person remained. No voices, no bodies, no tracks, not even a trace of spiritual presence. It was as if the people had been erased from existence in an instant. The mercenaries exchanged nervous glances, confirming what they all saw. Life had continued here as usual, but not a soul could be found. The captain turned to Aqua, hoping for an explanation, but she shook her head, admitting her inability. "I cannot sense what happened here. Even I do not know." With growing unease, the captain looked to Cattle. He too confirmed he had found no clues. "The air feels normal. There is no presence to detect." The captain's frustration boiled over. His voice cracked with anger. "This is madness. How can such a thing even exist?" Kettle, however, remained calm. His voice carried an unsettling confidence. "Then perhaps we should ask the one who does know the answer." The captain frowned, puzzled. "What do you mean?" Cattle's expression sharpened. "Because someone else is here with us." The group stiffened in shock, eyes darting around the empty streets. Then, to their horror, they noticed her. A strange woman standing quietly among them. Someone who had not been there before. The captain's face drained of color. "How long? How long has she been standing there?" The woman smiled faintly, her presence chilling. "Impressive. You noticed me, barbarian." "Most do not." Kettle met her gaze without flinching. Anyone would notice a stranger suddenly appearing in a place like this. She laughed softly, shaking her head. "Wrong. People only see me when I wish them to. Even the sun god's inquisitor failed to fence me." Her words sent a ripple of unease through the group. Aqua's eyes narrowed, but her silence confirmed the truth. She had sensed nothing at all. Kettle stepped forward, asking boldly, "Who are you really?" The woman ignored his question, her gaze predatory. "You are an unexpected prize." Danger radiated from her like a storm. The captain's instincts screamed at him. "Retreat! Everyone, get away from her!" But in his heart he felt terror. If even Aqua could not detect this woman's presence, then the truth was horrifying. Either she was not evil at all, or she was a being of evil so powerful that ordinary means could not register her existence. A cruel smile spread across the woman's lips. "I've made my decision. Barbarian, you will come with me to hell as my eternal slave." Her form writhed and twisted, revealing a nightmarish demonic shape. Her body expanded with unholy power, wings of shadow bursting forth. In her hands, a swirling ball of purple energy grew larger and larger, crackling with destructive force. Gasps broke from the mercenaries as she rose into the air, floating above them as if gravity itself bent before her. Aqua and Cattle stared up, momentarily frozen by the overwhelming power radiating from her form. Power unlike anything they had ever faced. The captain shouted desperately, "Run for your lives!" But before anyone could flee, a translucent barrier flashed into existence, encasing the entire village in a dome of magic. The mercenaries struck at it with blades and spells, but nothing made a dent. The demon's voice thundered across the empty streets, echoing with cruel finality. "This village is under my dominion. None of you will escape. All of you are mine." Her tongue ran greedily across her lips. My prey. Every face turned pale as the truth sank in. They were standing before a true named demon, one of the most feared entities in existence. Hayes collapsed, trembling, her voice rising in frantic prayer. "Oh, Lady Kusi, deliver us. Save us from this evil." A warm, steady hand pressed against her head. She looked up to see Kettle's calm eyes meeting hers. "Quiet yourself," he said firmly, though his tone was gentle. "I am here. I won't leave your side." Kettle narrowed his eyes on the demoness and asked Hayes calmly, "What does it mean for a demon to have a name? What makes them different from the rest?" Hayes' voice trembled as she answered, her hands shaking slightly. "Most who are called demons are nothing more than fragments of evil and stray magic, pitiful shadows with no true power of their own. But the real ones, the originals born in the abyss of darkness, they choose their own names, and once named, they become calamities. Even the weakest named demon holds enough strength to destabilize an entire kingdom and plunge it into chaos." Cattle's gaze returned to the woman floating before them. Now he understood. This being was not some trick of magic or ordinary fiend. She was one of those legendary disasters not to be underestimated. Hayes swallowed hard, her eyes fixed on the demoness' horns. "I know her. Those horns. She is Ashtir, the demoness of gravity. Centuries ago, she appeared in this world and left only ruin in her wake." Cattle asked bluntly, "Can the barrier be broken by force?" Hayes shook her head with despair. "No, this place is already her domain. The barrier is absolute. The only way out is to defeat her. But that is nearly impossible." Kettle placed a hand against the shimmering wall. To everyone's shock, the surface cracked instantly beneath his touch, as though it could not resist him. The fissures spread for a moment before sealing again. Cattle smirked, hiding the damage. A low laugh escaped his lips. "Interesting. I think I'll watch a little longer." Hayes stared at him in disbelief, completely thrown off by his calm amusement. But Kettle only gave her a reassuring gesture with his hand. "Don't worry." Above them, Ashtir let out a mocking laugh. "Tell me, wasn't my trick amusing? The village you thought full of life, nothing but an illusion, a game I prepared, a bait to draw you fools into my web." Aqua's crimson eyes flared with disgust. "Your games are vile, despicable." Her mind raced. Summoning a named demon requires an enormous sacrifice of souls. Even an entire village's worth is barely enough for such a ritual. And to extend a demonic domain this wide, unnoticed? Impossible. How did she enter this world without alerting the powers of good? Aqua's voice cut sharply. "How did you descend into this world unseen?" Ashtir smirked. "And why would I share my secrets with you?" Aqua's fury erupted. "You foul corruption, defiling this sacred land with your presence." The demoness burst into mocking laughter. "Sacred land? You pitiful mutt, obedient dog of your god. Tell me, will your mighty sun god save you now?" Her laughter ended abruptly, her tone shifting into something colder, heavier. "Listen well, Inquisitor. Cracks are spreading in the fabric of this world. Soon, it will not belong to humans and gods alone, as you've so arrogantly believed." Her voice carried like narration, dredging up the buried history of the world. Long ago, gods and men had waged war against the forces of darkness, and their combined might had cast the demons into the abyss. That was the crushing victory of light. But now the seals were breaking. Ashtir spread her wings of shadow, her presence pressing down like a crushing weight. I am Ashtir, the demoness of gravity. I have waited centuries in the pit of hell for this day. I will wash away the shame of defeat and blanket this world in darkness once more. Aqua's expression hardened, her voice sharp with defiance. This world belongs to the gods and to mankind. Return to the abyss where you belong, vile creature. Raising her staff, she began a sacred ritual, her voice echoing like thunder as she called for her god to descend and pour divine power into her body. A massive pillar of golden light engulfed Aqua as she began her transformation. Kettle glanced at her calmly, thinking to himself with amusement that enemies never seemed to attack during moments like these. When the light subsided, Aqua appeared clad in full divine armor, each plate glowing with radiant power. Her crimson eyes blazed beneath the golden helm, and her entire figure radiated the authority of a warrior chosen by the gods. Ashtir tilted her head with interest, then summoned a great crystal scythe into her hand. The elegant weapon pulsed with violet energy, and with a confident smile she declared her readiness to fight. Demons are always arrogant and overconfident, Aqua said coldly as she raised her weapon. In a flash of golden light, she launched forward at superhuman speed. Their weapons collided in a violent clash, divine and demonic forces surging against one another. The impact shook the ground and hurled both combatants back across the field. Recovering smoothly, Ashtir rested her scythe at her side and mocked. A true battle must be fought with dignity and respect. Do the gods' hunting dogs not know even this? Aqua steadied her stance, her glare sharp and unyielding. Enough of your nonsense. Are you ready to die? The clash between the holy warrior Aqua and the demonist Ashtir shook the battlefield. Aqua charged forward at blinding speed, leaving a storm of dust in her wake, her eyes blazing with holy fire. But in an instant, Ashtir vanished as if erased from existence. Before Aqua could react, the demonist materialized behind her, claws slashing with a sound like tearing air. Aqua spun and blocked at the very last second, her reflexes saving her from the fatal strike. But shock pierced her heart as Ashtir's claw seized her divine shield. No foe had ever touched it before. Exploiting the moment, Ashtir struck with all her strength, smashing Aqua into the earth with a force that cratered the ground. The demon pressed the attack mercilessly. She had sensed a gap in Aqua's defenses and rained down strike after strike, dark energies surging with each blow. Aqua staggered backward, blocking desperately as her foe's unrelenting assault drove her step by step toward collapse. Then Aqua raised her voice, chanting from her holy scriptures. Her words thundered across the battlefield, proclaiming that no darkness could defile the light. At her final word, a brilliant beam of radiance descended from the heavens, slamming into Ashtir. The demon screamed in pain, forced back by the divine power. Eyes narrowed, Ashtir studied her opponent. Sarcasm laced her voice as she admitted surprise that someone so young could wield scripture with such force. She mocked Aqua, calling her more interesting than expected. But Aqua was not finished. Raising her scepter high, she recited another verse, her voice trembling with fervor as she called upon her lord to burn all evil. The staff flared with brilliance, and she launched forward, her speed breaking the sound barrier. A massive explosion of holy fire followed, detonating in the demon's path. The duel erupted into chaos. Holy and demonic energies clashed at speeds beyond mortal sight, each collision detonating in violent explosions that tore apart everything nearby. The once quiet village became a ruin of flame and rubble. Buildings collapsed, streets shattered, and terrified mercenaries and villagers fled in panic, screaming as debris rained down around them. Through the storm of destruction, Aqua and Ashtir's battle only grew fiercer. Sparks of light and shadow filled the sky as their strikes collided in rapid succession, each impact threatening to tear the earth apart. And yet, at the edge of the devastation, Cattle stood calmly, hands in his pockets. His eyes gleamed with excitement, a smile tugging at his lips as though he were watching a grand performance. "Magnificent," he murmured, savoring the chaos. Hai, desperate and terrified, ran to him. Tears streaked her face as she clung to his arm, begging him to help Lady Aqua, who was risking everything for their sake. But Kanna's answer was chillingly calm. He admitted he could help, but asked coldly why he should. Hai froze, horrified by his indifference. He explained that he had no wish to spoil such an exhilarating fight. It was rare to witness battle at this level, and he wanted to savor it to the end. He admitted he longed to fight a demon himself one day, but for now, he would simply enjoy the spectacle. Hyde's heart filled with dread. His words chilled her to the core. To her, this man was not normal. His twisted enjoyment of such carnage marked him as something dangerous. Meanwhile, the battlefield roared as Aqua and Ashtir clashed once more. Holy light and demonic fire split the skies, their violent duels shaking the earth as sparks rained down like stars. Ashtir admitted to herself that Aqua was every bit as stubborn and unyielding as one would expect from the dogs of the gods. Yet she still believed she surpassed her in raw strength and battle experience. Even so, she knew there was a deeper danger. In this world, demons could not withstand divine power indefinitely, and already she felt herself slowly retreating before Aqua's growing light. If the duel continued unchecked, time itself would turn against her. A cunning glint lit her eyes. With a sly smile, she darted across the field at blistering speed, shifting directions in a blur. To Aqua's shock, her opponent was no longer charging her, but streaking toward the defenseless mercenaries cowering in fear at the battlefield's edge. Without hesitation, Aqua threw herself forward, raising her shield to block. Ashtia struck it with a torrent of dark energy, pouring relentless power against the glowing barrier to crack and weaken it. The mercenaries screamed, terror plain on their faces as they imagined what awaited them should the shield fail. Rage flared in Aqua's chest. She spat out a furious condemnation, calling her opponent a filthy preacher without honor. Ashtir only laughed with cruel delight, mocking the very thought. "Did you truly expect a demon to fight with the honor of knights?" she sneered. At the peak of her anger, Aqua raised her scepter and began to chant. Her voice boomed with sacred conviction as she recited one of her most revered verses, words reserved for only the direst moments. Brilliant golden essence erupted from her body, radiant light bursting outward in a wave. From that brilliance, a sanctuary dome formed, a holy shield that encompassed all. She commanded the mercenaries to hurry inside. The terrified survivors did not hesitate. With tears and gasps of relief, they rushed beneath the dome, their voices raised in thanks to the warrior who had saved them from certain death. Ashtir laughed wickedly, her voice echoing with malice. "So much precious scripture wasted on weak humans. Is that really worth it?" "Silence!" Aqua thundered back, her eyes blazing with fury. The demon only smiled wider. The perfect response from a holy warrior burning with righteous anger, she mocked. The two collided again, weapons and energy clashing in a storm of sparks. Aqua met the fierce attack head-on, but Ashtir twisted away with astonishing agility. With an acrobatic leap, she soared overhead and landed close, her voice dropping to a poisonous whisper at Aqua's ear. "Death is only death," she hissed. "No one will honor your noble sacrifice for these worms. If you continue like this, you'll fall in disgrace, dragging down the very god you serve." Her eyes gleamed with malice as she dangled a cruel temptation. If Aqua released the holy protection shielding the mercenaries, she could unleash her full strength in self-defense. If she then triumphed, her honor and her god's glory would be exalted. "So tell me, priestess, will you really die for a handful of worthless mortals?" Aqua's grip tightened. Her eyes burned with resolve as she dismissed the words as nothing more than petty psychological tricks. They would not sway her. Ashtir's grin widened into a vicious smile. "Then die a martyr," she spat. Her aura flared violently, the ground trembling under her unleashed power. With a roar, She gathered her energy to its absolute peak and hurled a devastating wave of darkness. A concentrated attack strong enough to tear the heavens apart. Aqua strained with all her might to hold back the overwhelming tide of dark energy. Her holy light flickered, its brilliance dimming under the weight of Ashtir's relentless assault. Then, in the blink of an eye, the demon appeared before her like a ghost and unleashed a violent explosion of shadow at close range. Aqua barely dodged, the blast hurling her backward across the ground. She recovered her footing quickly, but the shock and fear on her face betrayed how shaken she truly was. Ashtir gave her no reprieve. At blinding speed, she conjured rings of purple energy that streaked outward, encircling Aqua like venomous snakes. Darkness closed in, suffocating and impenetrable, until Aqua could see nothing at all. From above, Ashtir swooped like a hawk descending on prey. "I'm tired of your gods and their scriptures," she snarled, pouring all her strength into a devastating strike. The attack smashed Aqua into the ground. She coughed blood as her body convulsed from the force. Only at the last instant did she manage to raise her shield and block a claw aimed straight at her heart. Even so, she lay pinned, helpless as the demon continued her merciless assault. Ashtir gathered power into her palm, condensing it into a massive black sphere. With a roar, she hurled it into Aqua. The resulting explosion shattered the golden barrier that had been protecting the mercenaries. Shards of light scattered like broken glass as their only defense collapsed. A cry of despair tore from one of the survivors. "The shield is gone. We're finished." Ashtir's grin widened, her eyes gleaming with hunger. "Then I'll eat you for dessert," she sneered. "After I've savored the taste of this noble dog of the gods." She leaned forward, her jaw opening wide to reveal rows of razor fangs. But just as she lunged, her mouth snapped shut, stopped by a hand gripping her jaw with implacable force. Kettle stood there, calm and cold. "That's enough," he said flatly. "The game ends here." Both Aqua and Ashtir froze, stunned by his sudden appearance. The demon's mind reeled. She hadn't sensed him at all. It was as though he had materialized from thin air. Without another word, Cattle's fist smashed into her face. The blow detonated like thunder, launching her across the village in a shock wave that leveled buildings in its path. He turned back, brushing dust from his hand, and looked down at Aqua still lying in shock on the ground. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice calm and steady. Aqua gazed up at him in disbelief, and recognition struck her. This was the mysterious man who had once defeated Swordmaster Kane with effortless ease. From the rubble, Ashtir rose with fire burning in her eyes. She shrieked in fury, calling him an arrogant barbarian and demanding to know how he dared interrupt her feast. Cattle dusted his clothes and answered without hesitation, "Because Aqua is my friend, and for that reason alone, I will not let her die." His composure only stoked her fury. "Friend?" she spat. "I was going to keep you alive as my toy when I was finished with her. Now you'll regret crossing me." Kettle's lips curved into a smirk. "I'm no one's toy," he said, his tone edged with amusement. Her expression twisted into a wicked smile. "Then you'll die here." She raised her hand, and in a surge of power, a massive demonic scythe materialized, its blade dripping with malevolent energy. On the ground, Aqua tried to rise, wincing with pain. "Cattle," she pleaded. "Retreat. Flee while you can." But he shook his head calmly. "Despite appearances, I'm strong enough to handle her." Her voice trembled with concern. "No, you can't defeat a demon with physical strength alone." Despite her battered body, Aqua forced herself up, insisting she was still strong enough to fight. Her voice rang with conviction as she explained that only divine power could banish demons and purify their corruption. It was a cosmic law, set since the dawn of time, and here in the demon's own domain, there could be no miracle to save them. Kettle listened carefully, then looked at her weakened state, the blood on her lips and the tremor in her stance. "You don't look fit to fight at all right now," he said calmly. Aqua's eyes blazed with resolve. "It doesn't matter. I serve the god. and it is my duty to face evil head-on until my last breath. For a moment, Kettle was silent. Then he gave a small nod. Your faith is remarkable, he admitted, but you should rest. Leave this fight to me. His words startled her. She stared at him in disbelief, but he only smiled, broad and confident. I've always wanted to fight a demon, he said. Now I'll see how strong I really am. Ashtier let out a mocking laugh. You really think those pathetic human fists can touch me? Kettle's smirk didn't waver. Why don't we find out? The demon licked her claws hungrily. I'll enjoy watching your eyes twist in pain as I tear you apart. Her aura erupted, a swirling vortex of shadow that tore into the earth. With a roar, she launched forward at lightning speed, her body like a black arrow cutting through the battlefield. Aqua gasped, fear flooding her chest, certain he would be destroyed. But Kettle stood motionless, his calm unbroken. At the instant her claws slashed toward him, his fist shot forward. The punch landed squarely on her face. Bones shattered. Her head caved under the force, and her body was hurled into the air by the impact. The shock waves split the ground beneath them. Aqua froze. She could only stare in disbelief, unable to comprehend what she had just seen. The man who looked so ordinary had crushed the demon's charge, and her body with a single punch. Aqua stood frozen, eyes wide with disbelief, struggling to comprehend the scene before her. With nothing but his bare fist, Kettle had shattered the skull of a powerful demoness as if it were a decaying fruit. A faint, terrified whisper escaped her lips as she questioned whether such a feat could truly be possible for a mere human. At the center of the carnage, Ashtier's body began to reassemble, reforming from a violent vortex of swirling dark energy. Kettle watched with a cold smile, casually remarking that her head could grow back, even after being utterly destroyed. The nearby demons stared at him, their glowing eyes filled with both hatred and shock. One of them asked, voice hoarse and uncertain, who or what he really was. It was impossible to believe he was just human. But Kettle, unfazed, replied calmly that he was nothing more than a simple barbarian. Ashtier's expression twisted in rage. She took his answer as an insult to her intelligence. Her demonic senses, honed over centuries, could detect no trace of aura or mysticism within him. No magic, no spiritual force, nothing. And with that certainty, she concluded he wasn't using any supernatural enhancement, just raw, incomprehensible strength. The realization unsettled her deeply. Yet rather than retreat, she resolved to uncover the truth with her own hands. A wicked grin spread across her face as she lunged at Kettle with blinding speed. Letting out a piercing scream, she commanded him to die, scoffing that his fragile human form made the battle beneath her. Still, she saw no option but to end this farce. But in the next instant, her smile froze. Kettle caught her advancing wrist with effortless ease, like halting the tantrum of a child. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Before she could react, he drove a devastating punch into her chest. The blow landed like a cannon blast, launching her backward through the air. Dark blood sprayed from her mouth as pain, real pain, tore through her demonic form for the first time. She flew like a ragdoll hurled by a storm, crashing into the ground with earth-shaking force. A crater formed at the point of impact, debris scattering in all directions. Trembling, she tried to comprehend how a purely physical strike could produce such destruction. Kettle stood unmoved, calmly watching as her ruined body began to regenerate once more. Demons nearby finally realized the terrifying truth. His punch hadn't been enhanced by aura, enchantment, or magic. It was sheer, terrifying strength in its rawest form. Kettle, genuinely intrigued, examined Ashtier's reassembling form. He mused aloud about the mechanism behind her regeneration, how her body could restore itself with such speed and precision. But he didn't wait for a reply. Without warning, he stomped the ground. The force of it cracked the earth beneath him and unleashed a shockwave that splintered the surrounding stone. Then, in a blur of movement, he charged forward with blinding speed. Before Ashtier could even lift her reforming head, he seized it with both hands and smashed it into the ground with brutal force. Without pause, He followed up with a vicious sidekick that sent her body hurtling through the air once again. Once again, the tattered and scattered remains of Ashtira's body began pulling themselves together. Dark energy surged, reconstructing her piece by piece in a grotesque display of regeneration. Kettle watched calmly, a faint smile on his lips, eyes gleaming with interest. He remarked that each time her head was destroyed, it returned as if from nothing, an ability fitting for a demon. He wondered aloud if her head was her core, her life source. Ashtira rose slowly, fury simmering beneath her composed expression. The situation was both humiliating and surreal. Did he truly believe he could defeat her using nothing but brute force? Was this what he thought of her? With biting sarcasm, she mocked him. Does this mean I don't even need to try against your primitive strength? Kettle looked at her, confused. He didn't understand what she was implying, but the demons around her suddenly spoke in a tone that dripped with menace, warning him to listen carefully. Then, with pride burning in her voice, Ashtir declared her name once more. I am Ashtir, demoness of gravity. She challenged him to continue relying on raw strength and see where it would lead him. Kettle's response came with the same unnerving calm. You really don't seem that impressive to me. His words struck like a blade through her pride. Ashtir let out a deafening scream of rage, shaking the very air as she unleashed her full power. Blinded by fury and humiliation, she charged at Kettle, her eyes burning with violent sparks. As she neared, the space around her warped. Dark gravitational energy twisted reality itself, coalescing into a monstrous warhammer, black as coal and radiating visible crushing force. Swinging the colossal weapon, she brought it down on Kettle with the might to shatter mountains. But he didn't move. He raised his bare hands and blocked it effortlessly. Then, with a single punch, he shattered the hammer of solid gravity like it was made of glass. Before Ashtir could react, he followed up with another clean strike to her face. Her head exploded for the third time as her body was hurled backward. But she rose again, her body rapidly rebuilding. This time, disbelief consumed her completely. As the demoness of gravity, her power allowed her to condense the weight of a castle wall into a single hammer blow. And yet this man, not even awakened to mysticism, had blocked it barehanded and destroyed it. Her mind reeled at the impossibility. This is impossible, she screamed, her voice cracking under the weight of her outrage. Consumed by fury, Ashtia summoned an immense surge of dark energy between her hands. It crackled violently as it condensed into a massive, destructive beam. She screamed at the top of her lungs, commanding him to die. Kettle didn't retreat. As the beam surged toward him, he met it with a single punch. His fist tore through the demonic energy, colliding with it in a cataclysmic explosion. A blinding flash of white light erupted, born from the clash between his overwhelming physical power and her dark, magical force. The resulting blast rocked the battlefield. Aqua could only watch, frozen in awe and horror, unsure of what her eyes were witnessing. In that moment, she remembered what the ancient texts had said. Ashtir was a demoness of legend, one who had raised an entire kingdom on her own centuries ago. And now, she was being dominated, not by a mage, not by a hero, by a man using nothing but his fists. Kettle landed gently atop Ashtir's body, which was already beginning to regenerate once more. Observing her, he murmured that she seemed truly unkillable. Even immense physical power, he concluded, wouldn't be enough to end her for good. A cunning smile curled across the demoness lips as she heard his realization. But then something shifted. Suddenly, Ashtira felt a crushing pressure, one unlike anything she had experienced in her long and fearsome life. It emanated from Kettle, standing calmly over her, radiating a silent force that made the very air tremble. Her voice shook as she asked him once again, almost begging now, to reveal his true identity. But Kettle, as calm as ever, simply repeated, I'm just an ordinary barbarian. She refused to believe it. It was too absurd. Yet strangely, the fear she now felt thrilled her. It stirred something primal inside her. She admitted there was still one final thing she wanted to test. Her body dissolved into liquid shadow and slipped out from beneath his foot, rising into the air as a swirling mass of dark energy. Aqua's anxiety surged as she watched the transformation. High above, the massive energy coalesced into a massive black sphere, pulling nearby rocks and debris toward it with overwhelming gravitational force. From her position in the sky, Ashtir addressed the barbarian below, vowing to tear him apart with the full might of her power. The swirling sphere of darkness grew denser and heavier as she gathered all her remaining energy. This was her final and most devastating attack. Cattle understood immediately. This was her true power. The situation had become dangerously serious. Aqua saw it too, and she realized in horror that brute strength alone would no longer be enough. Something divine had to intervene, or they would all be lost. With a bitter smile, Ashtir began her final incantation. Let the thorns fall and kill. The sky darkened. A relentless storm of razor-sharp black thorns began to pour from the heavens like cursed rain. Cattle didn't move. Instead, he began rotating his arms at unbelievable speed, generating a whirlwind of sheer force. His flurry of blows became a shield, an impenetrable barrier of motion that shattered every thorn before it could reach him. Ashtir stared, stunned, and muttered in disbelief. What kind of beast is this man? She had no time to recover. Without warning, Kettle launched himself into the sky, his speed surpassing the sound barrier. The shockwave of his ascent cracked the ground below. Aqua seized that critical moment. With the last of her strength, she raised her voice and recited a verse from the sacred scriptures. Let the glorious light devour all evil. Divine energy flared in the air, coalescing into a radiant golden X. The holy weapon, pulsing with celestial light, descended from the heavens into Cattle's outstretched hand. He looked at it, astonished. Was this a gift from the gods? Below, Aqua, gasping and nearly collapsing, cried out to him, I gave it everything I had, and her now. Gripping the axe tightly, Kettle felt a strange resonance with the divine weapon, as if it recognized him. He turned his gaze to Ashtir and spoke coldly. Playtime's over. With that, he brought the axe down in a crushing vertical arc. The holy energy surged, piercing straight through the demon's body. In that moment, Ashtir knew without doubt that she had been truly, utterly defeated. The divine light exploded from within her, consuming her body from the inside out. Her screams were not of anger this time, but raw, undeniable pain. She fell from the sky like a puppet with its strings cut, crashing to the ground as a lifeless corpse. Cattle approached calmly and muttered, That was mildly entertaining. Ashtir, barely conscious, gasped her final words. To be reverse summoned to hell like this. How humiliating. But I don't regret it. At least, I confirmed your existence. Her voice weakened as she asked, Tell me your last name. He paused briefly before replying, simple and unwavering, Cattle. The moment Aqua heard that name, she screamed, her voice filled with pure fear and terror. Ashtir, already fading, erupted into a wild, broken laugh. With the last of her strength, she opened an ethereal communication channel, one so powerful it rippled through the fabric of reality itself. Her thunderous voice echoed across the abyssal dimensions, broadcasting a command to every demon in hell. Remember this name, Cattle the Barbarian. Burn it into the core of your collective memory. Never forget it. Aqua cried out in desperation, horrified by what was unfolding. Ashtir then gave one final order to her followers, her kin, her realm. When I fall, devour my memories. Learn everything you can about him. She laughed one final time, unhinged, victorious, and declared, This barbarian now belongs to all of you. In that instant, strange and invisible forces surged toward Kettle, like shadows slipping through cracks in reality. They rushed into him, infiltrating his mind. Kettle paused, eyes narrowing in confusion. Something was happening, something foreign, unnatural. He glanced at his body, felt something unfamiliar for a moment, and then shrugged with complete disinterest. His face remained blank, unmoved. Turning to Ashtir, he asked plainly, "What did you do just now?" "I felt something strange enter my body." Ashtir stared at him in horror. The demonic corruption, meant to infect and possess him, to drag him into eternal madness, had done nothing. Not a scratch on his soul, not a whisper of influence. "It's impossible," she whispered, voice quivering in fear. How did it fail? The darkness was supposed to overwhelm you." Without responding, Cad raised his foot and brought it down on the last remnants of her broken body. The demoness was obliterated, her essence crushed and scattered, never to regenerate again. Aqua and Hay screamed, staggered by what they had just witnessed, unable to process the magnitude of it. As the heavy, purple mist of Ashtir's death began to dissolve, the battlefield fell silent. Cattle stretched his arms, let out a breath, and smiled, calm, satisfied, completely unbothered. Then he turned to Aqua and asked casually, "So, does that mean the mission's done?" In the quiet territory of Barkin, nestled within the kingdom of Gahentra, troubling news spread like wildfire. Alarming reports surfaced about a nearby village with which all contact had mysteriously been lost. Newspapers soon became saturated with illustrations and speculation, all pointing fingers at the demonist Ashtir, believed to be responsible for the horrific attack. Within his study, the ruler of Barkin sat in silence, his face lined with sorrow. In a weary voice, he wondered aloud how such a devastating ordeal could befall the land he had worked so tirelessly to protect. Having only just recovered from a grueling battle against a lich, Barkin now faced a new menace, a named demon referenced in the oldest of historical records. Amid the unfolding disaster, there was at least one glimmer of hope. The brave inquisitor of the sun god had managed to temporarily repel the demoness, granting a brief moment of reprieve in time to consider the next course of action. The scene then shifts to Cattle, who could feel the entire territory gripped by unrest and anxious anticipation. His eyes settled on Aqua, resting peacefully as her body healed from deep wounds. To his surprise, she began to stir and speak in a faint voice. With deliberate movements, Aqua rose from the bed. Kettle, visibly concerned, asked if she was truly planning to leave so soon. He gently urged her to allow her body more time to recover before setting out again. Standing resolute, Aqua explained that she could not afford any further delays. She had to inform the Holy Land of what had occurred as soon as possible. Catherine understood and respected her unwavering resolve. Before leaving, Aqua turned to him with sincere gratitude. She thanked him for saving her life, admitting that without his help, she would have become nothing more than a helpless plaything in the hands of the demoness. Cattle shook his head and humbly declined her thanks, replying in a simple tone that he had only done what anyone would do for a friend. He then asked, almost curiously, if they were now considered friends. The question took Aqua by surprise. Could a barbarian from the north truly be friends with a devout servant of the sun god? She reminded him of her sacred identity, voicing her doubt, and asked if he still wished for friendship despite the stark contrast between them. Keto merely asked, "Is there any reason why not?" After a moment of thought, Aqua conceded that there wasn't. With that, Kettle concluded that their friendship was indeed possible. Aqua gave a faint smile and agreed. Kettle then mentioned he had a question and asked her about something he had heard. Was it true that one must never reveal their real name to a demon? Aqua confirmed it solemnly. She explained that demons use names to place a dark, invisible mark on a person's soul, a process known as marking. This mark acts as a beacon, drawing the attention of other malevolent entities and turning the person into easy prey, relentlessly hunted by evil. She added that in ancient times, those who were marked had to undergo complex baptismal rituals to remove the curse, or they would eventually be tracked down and slain by merciless forces. Cattle's expression darkened with concern. Quietly, he asked if this meant he had been marked during his encounter with the demoness. Aqua immediately reassured him that, fortunately, he hadn't been marked. However, She warned that his name had likely been exposed to the denizens of hell and was now known among them. Still, she told him not to worry too much. Without the mark, they couldn't accurately trace his location. The real danger would only arise if he were to encounter them face to face again. Cattle, thoughtful, remarked on how, even with his strength, he hadn't been able to kill the demons through physical force alone. Aqua nodded and explained that this was the mysterious nature of demons, beings fundamentally different from anything else in existence. She then began recounting an old tale. In the beginning, she explained the great gods created humankind and granted them life. But beings from beyond the known cosmos grew envious and took a malevolent interest in the human world. These entities crossed dimensions and invaded, unleashing unspeakable horrors and slaughter upon the people. Their violence was so great that the gods themselves descended to the mortal realm to defend their creation. They stood by humanity, named those otherworldly invaders demons, and banished them from the world, sealing the gate between dimensions behind them. Aqua continued, detailing how, after their salvation, humanity built temples and churches to honor the gods. With divine guidance, they flourished, advancing their civilization in peace. However, over time, for reasons still unknown, the demons began to stir once more. Subtly and cautiously, they returned, probing the boundaries between realms. Because demons are spiritual beings, Akbar explained, they can only be destroyed by divine or holy power. To face this threat, the gods chose devout followers and granted them fragments of their divine strength. From her words, Kettle deduced that demons couldn't be killed by physical force alone because they didn't truly belong to this world. Aqua confirmed this, adding that demons weren't part of the world's natural fabric. They were invaders from a different dimension entirely. Kettle's expression turned grim. The increasing appearances of such powerful beings, he said, could become a dire threat to all. Aqua reassured him high-ranking, named demons could not easily cross into their world. However, she revealed that something had changed. The cycles of dungeon appearances, once predictable, had become erratic and unstable. It was as if the sealed demon world had begun to influence their realm once more. Malevolent entities were starting to manifest gradually. These strange phenomena, she specified, had all begun exactly 1 year ago. That phrase triggered Cattle's memory. He realized it aligned perfectly with the time he had taken on his final quest in the vast snowfields. After their long conversation, Aqua thanked Cattle again and said she must depart. She invited him to visit her religious order someday, promising he would be warmly welcomed. Cattle smiled and replied that he would like that. As she settled into her carriage and the journey began, Aqua reflected on her still unhealed body. Despite her condition, she knew she couldn't delay reporting these events to the great saints. Her thoughts drifted back to Cattle, and a quiet confusion stirred within her. Why had the sun god offered no prophecy or sign about this powerful and mysterious barbarian? Elsewhere, in a different corner of the world, Swordmaster Kane strode through an opulent, intricately decorated corridor. A sigh escaped him. He was utterly drained after a long and arduous meeting with the Emperor. From the shadows, a figure emerged. A man with long black hair and an enigmatic presence. He remarked that Kane seemed to be having a difficult day. Kane turned, immediately recognizing the newcomer. It was none other than the Grand Master of the Magic Tower, the place where the most powerful mages and mystics in the world gathered. The Master of the Magic Tower asked Kane why he had come to the palace. Kane replied that he was there to deliver a detailed report on the outcome of his recent mission. With sharp intuition, the Tower Master correctly deduced that it had been a reconnaissance mission into the demon world, specifically, a region known as the Forest of Silence. When asked for his impressions, Kane's expression turned grim. He described the forest as a horrific place that defied every known law of the natural world. True to its name, not a single sound could be heard within it. Even mystic detection abilities malfunctioned, and when he tried to shout, not even the faintest vibration came from his throat. He recalled with horror how his soldiers vanished one by one in that terrifying, absolute silence. It was, he said, a loathsome and abominable place, Kane then wondered aloud why the Emperor remained so obsessed with conquering such a dangerous and alien realm. The Tower Master, cold and composed, remarked that he too found the demon world fascinating and was deeply intrigued by its secrets. Inwardly, Kane hoped he would not be drawn further into this complicated affair. He would rather keep his distance. Suddenly, without warning, the Tower Master raised his hand. A complex spatial magic circle shimmered into existence beneath their feet. In a flash, the two were transported across dimensions to a vast, breathtaking expanse. A star-filled space unlike anything in the material world. Stunned, Kane demanded an explanation. The Tower Master, smiling mysteriously, said that during Kane's mission, he had encountered someone very special. The statement made Kane freeze. With a flash of realization and growing anger, Kane understood what had happened. The Tower Master had placed a Watcher's Eye spell on him, spying on his every move. The Master confirmed it nonchalantly, admitting that he'd cast the spell during their last meeting and considered it one of his few enjoyable hobbies. Kane muttered a curse under his breath, but eventually calmed himself. Since the Tower Master had already seen everything, he asked what more he wanted. The Tower Master then asked Kane for his personal opinion of the barbarian from the White Snowfield, a figure long thought to be a mere legend. He pointed out that this man had not only bested a seasoned swordmaster, Kane himself, but had also crushed the powerful Lich Cardus as if he were nothing more than an insect. His sudden appearance from the edge of the snowfield made the story even more believable. Kane was deeply surprised to learn that Cattle had been the one who defeated Cardus. The Tower Master explained that, while the news had not yet been made public, strong rumors were already circulating within the Magic Tower. Cardos, the once great sorcerer who had shaken the continent, had failed in his resurrection attempt. The Tower Master admitted he had personally gone to the Lich's lair to pay his respects. Cardos had been one of the few members of the Lich lineage he considered a friend. Kane, taken aback, remarked that he hadn't expected the Tower Master to be capable of sorrow. But the Master replied that, for someone who had lived as long as he had, friendships became a necessity. Then, almost casually, he mentioned that no valuable artifacts had been found in Cardos's lair after his death. This puzzled Kane, who had believed all artifacts were recovered during the battle. But the Tower Master clarified, the most precious artifact of all had not yet been found. He then turned back to Kane and asked again, quietly but intently, if he truly believed that the barbarian had defeated Cardos alone. Kane answered honestly, he believed it was entirely possible, especially if the barbarian in question was the one he had encountered. The Tower Master, always perceptive, pointed out that Kane had yet to inform the Emperor of Cattle's existence. Kane shrugged, questioning why he should. He remarked bitterly that the Emperor was already throwing valuable people into the furnace of the demon world as if they were disposable. Revealing the barbarian's existence would only lead to a violent confrontation, one that Kane feared was inevitable. He predicted a catastrophic clash between two extremes, a barbarian who followed only his own instincts, and a mad emperor obsessed with controlling everything within his reach. It would be a conflict powerful enough to drag the entire kingdom into ruin. The Tower Master, intrigued, asked if Kane was suggesting that this barbarian could stand alone against the entire empire. Kane paused. He couldn't say for certain what the outcome would be, but he admitted he had felt something in Cattle. A sensation not unlike what he had felt the first time he met the Tower Master. An overwhelming presence, a sense of absolute power that defied the ordinary. The Tower Master raised an eyebrow and wondered aloud whether Kane believed Cattle to be of the legendary hero class. Kane hesitated, saying he wasn't ready to make that judgment. At least not yet. Still, the Tower Master concluded from Kane's words that Cattle was someone of extraordinary value. Kane nodded in full agreement. Meanwhile, in the busy streets of Barkan territory, Cattle was walking through the crowded market when a woman ahead of him suddenly stumbled, nearly falling. With swift reflexes, Cattle caught her just in time and steadied her. "Be more careful with your steps," he said calmly, then asked, "Are you all right?" As usual, he braced himself for the woman to recoil in fear once she looked at him, but instead, She thanked him politely and offered a respectful bow before continuing on her way. Kettle stood there, puzzled by her calm reaction. He looked around, scanning the street and observing the people around him. Passers-by were going about their business, some casting quick glances in his direction, but none were avoiding him. No one crossed the street to get away from him. No one recoiled in fear. A deep confusion settled over him. Why had people suddenly stopped fearing him? The sunlight poured gently into the luxurious chamber, scattering across golden drapes and polished floors. Sitting upon a grand chair, the Lord looked toward the young warrior who had just entered. His voice carried quiet concern as he asked, "Are you feeling all right? I heard you were nearly branded a demon." The Lord continued, his tone lowering with a hint of unease. Kettle, still dressed in his battle-worn armor, gave a faint, reassuring smile. "There's no real issue," he replied. "Honestly, I don't even know what a brand is." The Lord studied him closely, his sharp eyes narrowing slightly. "I see. I knew you were strong, but still." Then Kettle says, "But it seems the things around you are changing." "You mean the people?" the Lord asked curiously. "The people in the territory," the barbarian clarified, leaning back as if weighing every word. The Lord paused for a moment, realization dawning on his face. "Ah," he murmured softly. "That's probably because of the rumors," he explained. His tone carried a trace of frustration. He went on to describe how the whispers began, how villagers, merchants, and knights returning from the battlefield spoke of a man whose power defied human limits. Some claimed he wielded demonic energy. Others swore they saw divine light protecting him. Stories spread like wildfire across the land. They say after Aquas was defeated, everyone except one person had collapsed, and when they woke up, Keto's axe was glowing with divinity. Those who saw it believed that Aquas had lent you divine power. And so people began calling you the one who fought the demon with a quest. Listening silently, Keto sighed with a faint smile. "So that's how it turned out," he muttered, half amused, half resigned to the myth that now surrounded him. The room fell silent for a moment before the Lord spoke again, his expression softening. "Sorry about that," he said with a weary sigh. "By the time I tried to correct the rumors, they had already spread too far." The barbarian shook his head. "It doesn't matter," he replied calmly. "That's probably why people aren't afraid of me." The Lord frowned. "Most likely, they think of you as the demon opponent now." Kettle tilted his head slightly, as if tasting the title. "Demon opponent, ah!" He leaned back in his chair, eyes half closed in quiet thought. "So that's my reputation now." Days later, the morning sun shone over the bustling mercenary guild. Inside, a cheerful receptionist greeted him with a bright smile. "Congratulations, Mr. Keto. Your rank has been upgraded. You're now a C rank." Keto blinked, surprised. "C rank?" "Yep, you've jumped 3 full ranks," she said proudly, holding up a parchment. He scratched his chin, half amused. "That means I've actually accomplished something worth noting." The receptionist nodded enthusiastically. "Of course, you'll be issued a new mercenary badge soon. A custom one, made just for you. And because of that, it might take a bit of time. Even the badge will be custom made for me, huh?" He chuckled. She leaned forward, lowering her voice with excitement. "From C rank onward, you'll be recognized by the entire guild system as a real mercenary. So we have to treat you accordingly. You'll have access to most cities, capitals, and even temples. Only the imperial capital remains restricted." "The empire sounds quite strict," Keto commented. "Yes," she said with a small frown. "Only those personally invited by nobles can enter. No one really knows what's going on in there. All we hear are disturbing rumors. Honestly, there's been less known about the imperial capital than even the demon realm." "That bad hat," Kettle murmured. The cheerful receptionist cleared her throat dramatically, then announced, "Ahem, anyway, now that you're C rank, you can take on almost all available requests." Her excitement was contagious as she continued, "You can even enter B rank dungeons as long as you have a party." Kettle leaned back slightly, a faint smirk forming. Is that so? A B-rank dungeon, so I'll have access to many kinds of missions now. His tone carried quiet anticipation, the kind only a true warrior feels before new challenges. Elsewhere in the guild, a heavily armored knight sighed as he held his cup. I didn't expect something like that to happen. Later that day, Kettle reunited with his party at a tavern. His companions smiled with relief at his return. Was everything handled without issue? One asked. The demon was reported, and the Inquisition said it's all good. I guess it's settled, Kettle replied calmly. That's a relief, the guy replied, visibly relaxing. The ninja then said, Still, the Sun God's Inquisitor is incredible, defeating a demon like that. The female was shaking beside him. That day, I didn't pass out. She thinks to herself. That's why I could tell just how powerful that barbarian really was. He completely overpowered a named demon, which means Aquaz just came in and poked the food that was already prepared. The ninja then asked Keatle, now that he's a C rank, what he's planning to do. Nothing changes, Keatle answered simply, his voice steady. I'll just keep doing the job I assign myself as a C rank mercenary. His calm declaration silenced the table. I see, his friend said softly, watching him with quiet respect. The nun, however, frowned in disbelief. Even after rising that high, he's still humble. Don't be fooled, she thought, glaring. That stoic face hides terrifying power. Trying to lighten the mood, he leaned forward. So what do you all plan to do now? The ninja shrugged. We're just F rank. There's not much we can really do yet. Then, grinning, he added, to be honest, I was planning to live day by day like a parasite and die, but now I want to join Ren and rise like him. The armored knight snorted, shaking his head. Only junkies think that way. No wonder he's a bottom feeder. Tension grows between them as if a battle gonna start. Kettle leaned closer with a mischievous grin. Is that so? Then what's your plan from now on? The nun cleared her throat loudly. Ahem, she interrupted, drawing everyone's attention. Trying to sound casual, she said, I simply follow the will of Lady Kaloja, as always. Kettle nodded slightly, remembering something. Now that you mention it, I think I heard something from Aquaz. The nun froze, didn't expect that. Kettle continued calmly. Those serving Kaloja are currently on a break. Only the high-ranking ones are still active. Her expression stiffened. What? She blurted out, beads of sweat forming. Aquaz must have been mistaken. I'm just an ordinary priest, really? Is that so? If you say so, I'll take your word for it. The nun forced a laugh, though inside, she was panicking. He knows? Is he really testing me? Or just messing with me? A shiver ran through her spine as dark thoughts swirled. So scary, night fell over the city, stars glimmering above the quiet streets. Inside the mercenary guild, the receptionist stretched, yawning. Off work? Time to go home, she murmured to herself, sorting through paperwork. Suddenly, the door creaked open. A gust of cold air swept in, making her flinch. She looked up to see a tall figure in a dark cloak stepping inside. We're closed, she began. No way, but stopped when the man spoke. I have a request, the cloaked stranger said in a deep voice. She blinked, sighing in defeat. Overtime it is, she muttered, pulling out her ledger. All right then, what kind of request? The man, realizing that her eyes are completely unfocused, he stepped closer. His face, shadowed by the hood, cleared his throat. What I need, he said slowly, is an escort mission. 2 people, myself and a young girl. The sound of a pen scratching against paper filled the quiet guild hall. The receptionist, still half tired from the long shift, repeated, 2 people? And the destination? The hooded man's voice was calm yet heavy. The kingdom of Denying. She froze mid-sentence, glancing up. Its capital, he added, lowering his hood slightly, revealing just enough of a scarred face to send a chill through her. Her breath caught. An escort all the way to Denying's capital? From this remote region of all places. The man gave no further explanation. Standing still like a shadow, her mind began to race. An escort across nations? At this hour? She examined him carefully. The high-quality cloak, the elegant fabric beneath it, and the faint aura of nobility he carried. He's no ordinary traveler. Someone like that doesn't walk into the guild without a reason. Her green eyes narrowed slightly. Wearing a robe like that, and still hiding his identity, very suspicious. Still, professionalism outweighed curiosity. She took a steady breath and said, "All right, I'll accept it for now." She looked up and asked the final question with a careful smile. "Then, do you have any form of identification?" The atmosphere inside the quiet guild hall was heavy as the cloaked man stood before the receptionist. She eyed him carefully, still unsure what to make of him. "Something to confirm your identity?" she asked, her quill hovering above the parchment. The man adjusted his hood slightly and reached into his cloak. "Ahem," he muttered, then pulled out a small metallic card. "Use this." The receptionist's eyes widened the moment she saw it. "That's a mercenary guild token?" she gasped in disbelief. The insignia glowed faintly, engraved with divine markings only high-ranking clergy possessed. "That's not something easily obtained," she murmured, trying to process what she was seeing. Without another word, the man placed it flat on the desk. The guild's verification crystal glowed in response, confirming the emblem's authenticity. "Verified," she said quietly, almost in awe. "Then," she continued after a pause, "I'll collect the commission fee." The hooded man nodded and reached into his cloak once more. A moment later, a bright golden coin rolled across the wooden counter, shining under the dim lamplight. "Pure gold," she whispered in astonishment. "At this amount, we can provide one person," she said reluctantly, breaking the silence. "What?" the man replied, stunned. "Only one?" he exclaimed, leaning forward in disbelief. The receptionist quickly explained, "It's a bodyguard request after all. You're asking for an escort all the way to Denian's capital, across dangerous territory filled with monsters and raiders. The risk is extremely high." She gestured to a map on the wall showing the long, perilous route. "It could take nearly a month, depending on conditions. That's why only A-rank mercenaries usually accept such requests." The man frowned beneath his hood. "I see. But isn't there any way to get at least 2 people?" "It's possible," she replied after thinking for a moment. "But in that case, the mercenaries will be of a lower grade. Are you okay with that?" She leaned forward, her tone half teasing, half serious. "If you're seeking reliable guards, I'd recommend at least a D-rank mercenary." The man clenched his fist slightly. "Then please give me someone skilled," he said firmly. The negotiation at the guild continued late into the night. The cloaked man stood silently before the receptionist's desk as she scribbled down the request details. "The rate you've offered covers exactly 1 person," she explained, still uneasy under his calm but heavy presence. "Still, isn't there some way?" He remained silent, his hood casting a shadow over his face. She sighed, growing irritated. "What the heck? Why are you acting so desperate?" she muttered. "Honestly, from a remote territory like this, it's hard enough just finding someone willing to take the job." Straightening her posture, she said firmly, "I'll try my best, but finding 2 will be difficult." "I see," the man said quietly, finally nodding. "Understood. I'll leave it to you then." After he left, the receptionist stared down at the gold coin. It was pure gold, yet its surface was oddly flattened, as if pressed by divine heat. "Small, but quite a rare coin," she whispered. "Its surface is strangely refined." As he walked away, she watched his fading figure through the open doorway. He's trying to hide his identity, but who exactly is he? A chill ran down her spine. "Ugh! This is going to be trouble," she murmured to herself. Outside, the night wind swept through the empty streets. The cloaked man walked alone, his boots tapping lightly on the cobblestone. Suddenly, he stopped in front of a wooden door. He knocked it. A blonde girl asked, "Who's there?" The man, revealing his face, replied, "Your loyal retainer." The man relaxed slightly as a second figure stepped into view. A blonde woman wrapped in a similar robe, her soft blue eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "Aaron," she said quietly. She lowered her hood and smiled warmly. "Her name is Elaine." "Please come in," she said gently, guiding him inside the candlelit house. "How did it go?" she asked once the door closed behind them. "They accepted the request for now," he replied, removing his hood. "Thank goodness," she sighed with relief. "How many people did they allow?" He hesitated for a moment. "Just one." Elaine's smile faded, her expression tightening with concern. The flickering light reflected in her worried eyes, hinting that whatever journey they were planning, it wouldn't be a simple escort mission. Inside the quiet room, the cloaked man lowered his head. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "We don't have enough spare funds." Elaine forced a small smile, shaking her head. "No, it can't be helped. If only I hadn't been stupid enough to get scammed." The man added. She sighed. "No, that couldn't have been avoided. Even if it had been me, the result wouldn't have changed." Their eyes welled with tears and suddenly buried their faces in their chest, crying out in frustration. The man froze awkwardly, caught off guard by the sudden outburst. "Silence!" he shouted, flustered. A long pause followed before both stood silently, avoiding eye contact, faces slightly flushed. After a moment, she cleared her throat. "Ahem. Anyway, about the escort mission. How long do you think it will take?" He crossed his arms in thought. "I don't know. Finding someone trustworthy might take some time." "I see," Elaine said softly. "Then we'll just have to wait for now." She smiled, her expression turning gentle. "It's late. You've done well, AROM. Get some rest." He nodded slowly. "Yes." Later that night, Elaine stared out the window, her expression darkening under the moonlight. The sky shimmered faintly, like golden dust scattering through the air. She muttered under her breath, "Again tonight, huh?" The next morning came quietly. Aroem stood by the table, his voice heavy with regret. "I'm truly ashamed. It's really hard to find someone reliable." She frowned. "This is troubling." Then she noticed the small bag of supplies on the floor. "We're starting to run low on food. Can't be helped. We'll have to starve for a while." "I know," he said, lowering his gaze. "It's all because of my incompetence." "No, Aram," she said gently, shaking her head. "It's not your fault." He hesitated, then muttered, "Still, telling the lord of this territory about our situation." Before he continues, she intervenes. "We can't risk it." Elaine looked down, conflicted but understanding. "Yes, we can't trust anyone. Even hiring a bodyguard is dangerous. We can't afford to take any more risks." The night deepened in silence as Aline broke it with a calm voice. "Aaron, do you remember the day we had to abandon the kingdom and flee?" Her eyes darkened with the memory. "We didn't even know who was friend or foe. Even though it's been a while, there's still no word from there." She sighed softly. "Even though both of us escaped. I'm sorry. We've grown weak-hearted." Aaron lowered his gaze, the weight of their past clear in his expression. Outside, the moonlight spilled over the distant mountains. The grand capital of Denine shone faintly on the horizon, a symbol of safety and risk all at once. "By the way, Orlum," Aline asked hesitantly, "are you sure Danane's kingdom is truly safe?" "Yes," he replied with confidence. "That place will protect you well. The king of Denine made an oath when the princess was born." He paused, his tone turning serious. "They might even help us seek revenge. That's why you must survive, Elaine Avarak." His gaze softened. "Our princess." Elaine looked down, her fists trembling slightly. "If even you are lost, our kingdom will truly be finished." He added, "But," she hesitated, "can we really trust a mercenary?" "You don't need to worry," Arom reassured her. "We paid the guild well for a reason. They'll surely recommend someone trustworthy." Aline nodded slowly, though uncertainty still lingered in her eyes. "I hope so," she whispered under her breath. Then her expression softened as a thought crossed her mind. Just who will end up guarding me? Her imagination ran wild, picturing a strong, handsome warrior with a noble spirit. Her cheeks turned pink. I hope it's a handsome, knightly person. Meanwhile, far away, Kettle lay sprawled lazily on a wooden bed. Nothing to do, he muttered, staring at the ceiling in boredom. He sighed, rolling over. Now that I think about it, what are those guys up to now? A small smile crept onto his face as he recalled his old comrades, those stubborn brutes of the white snowfield. I bet they're still living their same stupid lives, he chuckled. His thoughts drifted back to that time, the blinding snow, the roaring winds, and the day his journey began. Our first quest over snow, he murmured. He remembered the freezing air biting his skin and the massive white bear charging toward him. At first, he thought it was just a hallucination, until the pain and the icy wind reminded him it was all real. Yeah, he said to himself with a faint grin. That first quest was hell. I nearly froze to death in a week. The blinding white of the snow stretched endlessly. In the freezing cold, Kettle's quest window shimmered before his eyes, its faint blue glow a reminder of how it all began. He had become a man of quiet footsteps, his breath visible in the icy air. The screen before him displayed quest complete. Yet after leaving the snowfields, no new quests appeared. Now, lying on his bed in the dim light of his small room, he stared at the ceiling, lost in thought. Now that it's quiet, I'm almost bored, he muttered to himself. Outside, the night wind rustled through the trees. He sat up abruptly, a hint of realization crossing his face. Don't tell me it was only for the white snowfield? His eyes narrowed, uncertainty flickering across them. I'm not sure, he murmured, turning toward the window. The faint blue light of his system window appeared once again, hovering silently before him. Thanks, system window, he said dryly, a smirk tugging at his lips. I'll play this world however I want. The scene shifted as sunlight poured through the guild's wooden walls. Kettle stood before the counter, scanning the paper handed to him by the receptionist. An escort request? He asked, raising an eyebrow. The receptionist, clearly trying to hold back her excitement, nodded enthusiastically with a bright smile, and so, not realizing that Kettle had just accepted the request that would lead him into his next fateful journey. At the mercenary guild, Kettle looked down at the parchment in his hand. What kind of request is it? He asked casually. The receptionist, Rosa, tapped the paper with her pen. Just as it sounds. You'll escort the client to their destination safely. Is that all? He replied, unimpressed. Rosa shook her head. You'll be traveling for several days. The guild will provide lodging, but all travel preparations and protection fall under your responsibility. Kettle nodded slightly, though his expression stayed neutral. It'll take a lot of effort, Rosa warned him, but the pay matches the risk. However, she trailed off, her tone lowering. However, Kettle repeated. Rosa sighed. It reeks, honestly. The request stinks to high heaven. You can refuse if you want. Kettle's lips curved into a faint smirk. You don't get it, Rosa. Huh? She blinked, confused. He chuckled, eyes narrowing with intrigue. That's exactly what makes it good. As he glanced back at the request form, his gaze caught the destination written in neat handwriting. Destination? Capital of the Denayan Kingdom. His expression changed slightly. Denayan Kingdom? Huh? He murmured. Something about the name sparked a buried memory. A brief vision flashed in his mind. A woman with long blue hair smiling under the snowy plains. Mylina of the Akasha family. The merchant woman he met in the snowy plains. He remembered her words clearly. If you ever visit, you'll always be welcomed. A faint smile crept across his face. This is perfect. Without hesitation, Kettle turned back toward Rosa. I'll accept the request. The system window lit up instantly before him. Lines of glowing text filling the air as blue particles shimmered. Then suddenly, the air grew heavy. Kettle's eyes widened as strange blue symbols rippled across his vision. The sound of energy distortion echoed through the room, shaking the floorboards. "What?" he gasped. A sharp blue flash filled the air as Kettle's system window suddenly appeared before him. He froze, startled by the familiar surge of energy. Quest 785. Escort the client to the Denayan Kingdom. Kettle's eyes widened. "Wait. Why is this popping up now?" he muttered. For months, the system had remained silent, but now it was responding right after he accepted that escort request. The blue light pulsed, reacting to his confusion. "Kettle, sir," Rosa called out, her voice trembling as the energy shimmered around him. Ignoring the stares, Kettle clenched his fist. "No way. It's linked to this mission." Meanwhile, at a distant inn, an old man staggered through the door, panting heavily. "Aaron?" A soft voice called. It was Aline, her eyes wide with concern. "The request?" Aaron gasped, gripping the wall for support. "It's been accepted." Her heart skipped. The only C-rank mercenary in this territory? Aline placed a hand on her chest, her pulse racing. "A C-rank? Oh, really?" she repeated in disbelief, her nervousness barely masked by a faint smile. He nodded firmly. "Yes, you'll meet him tomorrow morning. So please, rest well tonight." Elaine nodded, yes. The next morning, the system window shimmered once again before Kettle. Quest 785. Escort the client to the Denayan Kingdom. He stared at it in silence. Why show up now after all this time? Then his expression hardened. So it wasn't exclusive to the white snowfield. The blue light flickered once more as he muttered, "Or maybe there's something more to this quest." Outside, thunder rumbled faintly in the distance, marking the beginning of another fateful journey. Thunder roared across the sky as heavy rain poured over the mercenary guild. Inside, a tense silence filled the room. Aline sat beside Aaron, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched the edge of the desk. What kind of person could it be? She wondered aloud, unable to hide her nervous curiosity. Beating a C-rank mercenary means he's at least skilled with the sword. Her imagination began to wander. Maybe he's a cool, composed swordsman, or perhaps someone rugged, confident, and brave. Her cheeks flushed pink at the thought. The next morning, the storm finally cleared. A knock echoed at the door. Elaine's heart skipped. "He's here," she whispered. The door creaked open, and a tall figure stepped in, drenched in rain, his presence radiating quiet strength. Lightning flashed behind him, outlining his sharp silhouette. Kettle had arrived. The moment their eyes met, Elaine froze in disbelief. Could it be him? Kettle's calm voice broke the silence. "Pleased to meet you." Elaine's voice stuttered. "A mercenary, sir?" she whispered before fainting on the spot. Aaron quickly caught her before she hit the floor. "Print no. Lady Elaine, are you all right?" His expression changed to shock. "You? Who the hell are you?" Kettle glanced at him coolly. "It's been a while since anyone in this territory looked at me this cautiously," he said, his tone detached yet heavy, as thunder rumbled outside. He looked down at the unconscious Elaine. "Ever since I defeated that demon, no one here has dared to challenge me," he murmured. "Rosa, are these the ones I've hired?" Kettle asked, glancing toward the pair. Rosa nodded. "Yes, that's correct. Allow me to introduce them. This is the one who will be in charge of your escort, Barbarian Kettleman." Aaron blinked, startled. "What?" He jumped from his seat. "A barbarian? What kind of nonsense is this? How can a barbarian be hired as a mercenary? Please request a different mercenary." Rose's expression instantly turned sharp. "So you're questioning the decision of our mercenary guild?" Aaron froze as her glare pierced through him. "No, that's not what I meant." "Then if you doubt the guild's judgment," she interrupted coldly, "we'll consider the contract void and return your payment." "No, that's not it." Aaron panicked, bowing his head. Kettle sighed quietly to himself. "I feel like I've become a walking time bomb." After a brief pause, Elaine stood and spoke softly. I'll accept it. Aaron turned to her, shocked. Lady Elaine, but still. She shook her head and smiled faintly. It's all right. Kettle's gaze softened as he looked at her, finally stepping forward. Oh? I look forward to working with you. Elaine met his eyes, her voice calm yet graceful. My name is Elaine. As she introduced herself, a radiant light seemed to bloom behind her. And in that moment, Kettle knew this escort mission would be unlike any other. As they walk through the quiet forest path, the sound of their footsteps fills the air. Kettle glances back at the two trailing behind him. The princess and her companion are walking side by side, but keeping their distance. He raises an eyebrow and remarks, "Isn't it a bit too far? You might be better off a little closer." The two immediately stiffen, forcing awkward smiles as they wave their hands nervously. No, we're fine. Really? They insist in unison, trying to hide their embarrassment. Aaron scratches his head and says thoughtfully, "There's been no sign of any danger around so far." Kettle's expression softens, relieved that their journey has been smoothed up until now. But confused, he doesn't get it. But if that's what makes them comfortable, then it's fine. He turns around and continues walking. Then the princess' mind drifts back to the night before, thinking that in the end it turned out like this. Last night at the merchant residency, Kettle reaches out his hand with a confident smile. "I'll be counting on you from now on. I'm Kettle." The princess hesitates for a moment before shaking his hand. "Yes, I'll be fine, right?" she stammers, blushing faintly. Kettle smirks reassuringly. "Just trust me and leave it to me. As long as I'm guarding you, your safety is guaranteed." His tone carries unshakable confidence. The princess nods with a nervous laugh. Yes, her thoughts are flustered. Is trusting him really the best option? As the flashback fades, Kettle looks up at the setting sun. "For now, we'll have to spend the night here," he says calmly. The princess looks surprised, blinking as the realization sets in. Their journey is far from over. Kettle turns to the princess and her attendant with a calm voice. "Are you okay?" he asks, noticing their tired steps. "Yes?" the princess stammers, startled by his sudden attention. Kettle looks up at the starry sky. "As you can see, it's late and visibility is poor. Since we departed in the evening, just as you requested, it might be better to stop here for the night." The princess hesitates, then nods. Right. Let's do that then." Kettle glances around, scanning the area. His sharp eyes catch something on the ground. He crouches slightly, noting faint traces of a previous campfire. "Looks like the fire of our barbarian ancestors still hasn't completely faded." He smirks. "Guess this will last a little longer." Rolling up his sleeves, he reaches for his pouch. "Anyway, I'll set up a place for you to sleep." In one smooth motion, Kettle tosses out a small cube that begins to glow with runic energy. With a flash of light, a full-size golden tent unfolds before their eyes, leaving both the princess and her companion speechless. An artifact?" she gasps. "An artifact of that level? How could a barbarian have that?" The princess mutters under her breath, clearly shocked. Kettle shrugs casually. "Oh, you mean this? I got it after completing a lot of requests." Both of them stare at him in disbelief, still trying to process the absurdity of what they just saw. After setting up the tent, Kettle turns back to them. "But there's only one tent," he explains, "so you two will have to share it, if that's okay." The princess blinks in surprise. "Kettle, what about you?" "I don't mind," he replies calmly. "I'm used to sleeping outside anyway." He smiles faintly as he remembers. Compared to shivering and barely resting in a snowstorm, this is paradise. He chuckles. "I'll also stand watch the whole night. There was a time in the snowfields when I didn't sleep for a whole month while being hunted by monsters." The princess looks at him, speechless. "That's a bit too extreme." Kettle simply waves it off. "You two just sleep peacefully. I'll handle the rest." But the princess shakes her head quickly, flustered. "No, it's all right." Her expression softens, clearly moved despite herself. She looks at him with concern. You don't need to deprive yourself like that, she says softly. Let's take turns standing watch. Kettle crosses his arms, unconcerned. I don't mind, he replies. Her attendant nods beside her. Neither do we. Kettle pauses for a moment, staring at the two of them, clearly surprised by their determination. He sighs with a faint smirk. Well, if you insist, I suppose there's no helping it. As the night stretches on, Kettle keeps his distance, leaning against a nearby tree while the other two stay near the tent. I was planning to stay up all night with that change, he thinks, glancing at them. What a shame. Watching them whispering and smiling faintly before retreating inside the tent. He shakes his head, while the two of them think, who knows what he'll do while we're asleep. The faint sound of the wind rustles through the trees, and the night passes peacefully. The next morning, the golden rays of the sun pierce through the forest canopy. Birds chirp loudly, announcing the dawn. The tent glimmers under the soft light. Another day of their journey begins. Inside, the princess groans weakly. But I didn't get a wink of sleep. I feel like I'm dying. She clutches her stomach, which growls loudly. Her attendant looks equally miserable, sitting silently beside her. Then her stomach lets out a loud gurgle. Her face turns red as Kettle, who is outside, turns around with an amused look. You're hungry? He asks with a faint grin. The princess freezes, too embarrassed to respond. Well, you haven't had a proper meal in a while, Kettle says casually. Wait here a moment. She blinks. Yes? Kettle rolls up his sleeves. I'll cook something for you. The princess's mind goes blank. Cook? She thinks, flustered. As he begins preparing the ingredients, the aroma of sizzling food fills the air. Her face flushes pink as she mutters under her breath, a barbarian? Cooking? Both she and her attendant glance at each other, completely dumbfounded. Aaron, jaw opened, ask if ever learned how to cook. Kettle, unfazed, flips the pan with skill. It's just a hobby, he says calmly, not even looking back at them. As the princess and her companions stare at Kettle, he begins explaining how he learned to cook, his tone calm but firm. There in the Stonehead tribe, we never cooked, he says. They just tear into the meat and blood of whatever BS they caught. His voice carries a note of nostalgia mixed with amusement. Too busy trying to fill their bellies. Images flash through his mind of roaring fires and brutal hunts. But I cooked using the remains of those beasts, he continues. The ingredients in the snowfields were all foul and dangerous. He smirks as he remembers the grueling days of trial and error. After countless failures, I finally began to perfect my cooking. It shifts to show Kettle proudly holding a steaming bowl as the spirits of his fallen tribe members cheer him on. I studied cooking in the harshest conditions, where even lighting a fire was a challenge, he adds, his tone almost proud. Flames swirl around him as he declares, there's no place where I can't cook. Kettle glances at the sizzling pan and mutters, as expected, this food is far too easy. He scoops the meal onto a plate and turns toward them. Here it's done. Steam rises from the dish. A surprisingly refined meal. Glistening under the sunlight, the two stare wide-eyed. Ah! The princess gasps, unable to hide her surprise. Then, suddenly flustered, she waves her hand. No, I'm fine. I don't really like greasy food. She stammers, trying to keep her pride. Her companion quickly adds, I'm fine with just this. Kettle raises a brow but chuckles softly. I see. Do you prefer jerky then? No, that's not. She begins, but before she can finish, Kettle sighs dramatically. Then I guess I'll have to eat this alone. What a shame. He digs in without hesitation, savoring every bite while the aroma fills the camp. The princess clenches her fists, glaring at the meal. I want to eat it, but I can't trust the barbarian's cooking. Her stomach growls again, betraying her pride. She crosses her arms stubbornly. There's no way I can eat it. As the sun sets, night descends upon their camp once more. It's the third night of the journey. Inside the tent, the princess twists and turns in her sleep, groaning. Ugh! Her stomach churns painfully. Her attendant jolts awake in panic. Why, Your Highness? Are you all right?